So when you think functionally, you always have this kind of counterintuitive option. It gives you leverage very often clinically. And you're also applying it to yourself, which encourages you constantly to look at how helpful is this? Is this what I really want to be about? Is this moving me in the right direction as a therapist, as a friend, as a person living in this moment?
Welcome back to Act Root to Fruit. My name is Marcel. I'm a psychologist, clinician, on a quest to dig up the roots of the contextual behavioral sciences so that the fruit that us clinicians deliver is as pristine as possible. The contextual behavioral sciences include acceptance commitment therapy, FAP, functional analytic psychotherapy, and clinical behavior analysis, amongst others. I'm excited to bring you part 2 of my dance with the great Steve Hayes. We tackle thinking functionally, how we as clinicians can start to think and conceptualize more functionally. Talk about the health and psychological flexibility and the importance of history in these kinds of approaches, personal history. And lastly, we finish up with a real play, and Steve leads me on a extended guided meditation. So I welcome you to get in a comfy place, especially if you're enjoying this here production. I welcome you to subscribe wherever you're consuming it. Feel free to review, like, and also I am organizing some training groups around these processes that I'm focusing on. So thinking functionally and functional analytic psychotherapy is the main thrust of the group. So if you're interested, hit me up. Groups are online, and really nice way to connect with other clinicians who are on the same path and interested in the same philosophies and approaches. So without further ado, Steve Hayes.
So one of the things I'm really wanting to know about from you is, like, how do you think people can start to think more functionally? Who aren't, like myself. I'm a counseling psychologist. I was very eclectic, like I said before. I didn't have a firm philosophy of science or theory that I was grounded in.
Sure.
And I think that that's a lot of folks coming to ACT.
Sure, absolutely.
CBS.
Well, I think the key thing about thinking functionally is to first, don't think ontologically in terms of just objects and pieces that are preformed by your sensory and perception system or by your cognitive system. Think in a way that's more open and fluid. There's many ways to parse the environment that you're in, and let's parse it in ways that are functional. But then, if we're dealing with behavioral science, psychological science, this is not physics, it's not chemistry. There, the subject matter is this ineffable verb like thing of behaving, thinking, feeling, remembering. There's always an ing on it. And they disappear as they appear. They flow. The units can be huge or little, grasping the door of your car or driving to the beach. I mean, your relationship with your wife, or hi dear. I mean, it goes from the most grain of sand like things to function says this: think of these gerunds as transitions from one state of affairs to another, and appreciate the state of affairs and all of its complexity that is being transitioned. That's almost beyond our capacity to imagine, never mind to model and study.
And then interact with in vivo.
Yeah, I mean, the thing you just did may have something to do with your epigenetic regulation due to, the Holocaust. The thing that you just did may have to do with what you ate this morning, or sleeping badly last night, or, a thought that just occurred that was occasioned by something that was said. Or so you're like this complex system with double-headed arrows everywhere, with an almost infinite number of things interacting and flowing. Well, if you just stay with that, you can't do anything. But if you simplify always with humility and respect to the complexity that exists in the one world, at least in principle.
Okay.
Because it could be simple, who knows? Holding on to transition as the focus will keep you from making the error of grabbing onto features or parts or relations, saying that's it. But it'll keep you humble, but it'll also keep you open and allowing yourself to sort of interact with the flow in a way that's pretty unusual, because it's a kind of a Zen exercise to do that. Our normal language doesn't teach us to do it. Our technical language often doesn't. And so when, here's a practical example.
Okay.
Person says, I feel so badly about myself. Sometimes I hate myself. You know, the pull to take that difficult thought as if that's the problem is huge. But that person just said something that has a functional impact on you. That might be part of what the saying is about. It has a functional impact on the person who said it. It has a cultural history and a family history. It points to something that might be of importance. And to look at that as a transition, you might say, you know, and how does that help you? What? Help me? I'm not saying it has to, but could you take that seriously? And, you know, people will catch things like, I whip myself to make myself achieve, and I'm afraid if I didn't, I wouldn't do anything, you know, as an example. And I'm not saying everybody who has a negative thought about themselves are doing that. I'm not saying that. But these counterintuitive, and the reason I picked that one is there's a function that's counterintuitive. The form of the thought looks negative, right? It has to have a negative function. No, it doesn't. I mean, you get up in the morning and start beating yourself about the head and ears all the time. To what? To get up and get your kid to school. And is it the way you should do it? Probably not, but does it have a positive function? Yes. Could you do it another way? Yeah, probably be healthier too. But don't be so quick to just grab at the form. Look at the function.
Yeah.
And then are there other ways that we could accomplish that maybe be a little gentler, a little more self-kind, that would allow more compassion for others? Don't be drawn into the form again. Compassion is a relation. Kindness is a relation. It's a function. There's a tendency to define self-kindness as, oh, I'm okay. No, you can say those exact words in ways that are horrible to yourself and other people. You can use it to justify bad behavior. Behavior that you're, you know, really don't want to be engaging in. So when you think functionally, you always have this kind of counterintuitive option. It gives you leverage very often clinically. And you're also applying it to yourself, which encourages you constantly to look at, how helpful is this? Is this what I really want to be about? Is this moving me in the right direction as a therapist, as a friend, as a person living in this moment, etc.?
Part of what I also heard in that is that kind of, rather than just looking at how is this negatively impacting this person, like what else is it doing? Because the draw in that to the literal sense is and like you said, that is the problem, that thought is the problem.
Yeah. You know, when you start looking at function and you're looking at things that are negative, almost always you see that what the person is trying to do is not negative. I wrote about this a lot in Liberated Mind, of that there's this mishandled energy, I call it, this motivational yearning, need. People would come back to Maslow. You know, no wonder it's in that book. Finally got there after 40 years. But anyway, there's this underlying thing that you're yearning for when you're doing things that are negative, that are So for example, and I'm bad, or so, there's an underlying yearning to make sense of complexity. That's one.
Mm-hmm.
There may be an underlying yearning to to be able to feel fully and without needless defense. And that bit might make sense of it. The reason I do things is I'm just bad. It might also say, yeah, and I want to feel, but I only can feel the good stuff because this bad stuff's so painful.
Mm-hmm.
It could connect to belonging. Help me, I'm so bad.
Mm-hmm.
Will you be my friend? It can have multiple functions, and the functions that you're yearning for are not bad. We all yearn for having things be sensible, to be able to feel, to belong. But, doing that, I'm bad, and maybe even whipping competence out of it. Therefore, I have to do my homework. I have to, you just looking at, therefore, I have to do my to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but you may be snipping on the end of your telomeres. You may be doing things that won't allow you to sort of relax with your spouse tonight. Look more broadly, is this really how you want to be in the world? But not because it's a bad thought or because bad is in the word. Or so don't go by form, go by function. But consider what is the function in a way that allows you to dig into what's of importance and appetitive, even inside pathology. When you think functionally, you start thinking situationally, and there's a kind of compassion that comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
People are not trying to screw up their lives. They're really not. They're not resisting your therapy. They're not, inherently perverse or maladaptive. They don't have a personality disorder. They're mismanaging the challenges of life. I get that. You too, in some ways. So
Yeah.
let's come in and use our science to help orient us towards.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And where would you send people who are wanting to learn about kind of a clinical functional assessment specifically?
Well, I'm on a journey right now with my colleagues, my ACT colleagues, but beyond that, Stefan Hoffman, Joe Sorochi, those people, on trying to, really rethink what therapy even is in this process-based therapy approach to ACT and psychological flexibility, and beyond ACT to all of evidence-based therapy, not just in the cognitive behavioral tradition, but the humanistic, existential, analytic, et cetera tradition. And thinking functionally is actually kind of in all of those traditions, but it gets overwhelmed. And we're using evolutionary science as a way to do that, because almost everybody who's a scientist anyway wants to say, well, what I'm doing fits with evolution. There's very, very few folks who say it, who want to say, no, what I'm doing doesn't have anything to do with evolution. And evolution has to do with this kind of variation, selection, retention, and context functional process.
Mm-hmm.
I appealed to it earlier when I was talking about Donald Hoffman, even in how we understand our sensory system and corresponding things with the world and so forth. So where I would send people now, right at this moment, is to training and a process-based approach. And it would be good to start with the psychological flexibility model and the ACT stuff. I do have, COI warning, because I make money on online courses, but I too have two, ACT immersion and ACT in practice. By the time you get to ACT in practice, I'm really into process-based therapy ideas. And we have a book that we finished, Stefan and I, called Learning Process-Based Therapy. He's doing a webinar in August that I think will be really cool. So where I'd send people is to, I think those ACT books and trainings, but looking forward, not just saying, okay, now it's ACT uber alles. Okay, now we've got the answer. we're just going to apply these ACT techniques. No, no,
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
There's many, many things you know how to do clinically that are not in ACT books that make perfect sense in the light of psychological flexibility and processes of change, and applying these to the individual in a new form of functional analysis. And so there's no turnkey thing I could send you to, but I'd send you into this CBS tradition and all these people, these almost 10,000 people in this society, this association, or the people influenced by it, or much more than that. Trying to answer that question in a way that is respectful of the clinical challenge and the scientific challenge as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I recently picked up Depression in Context by your internship mate there, Neil Jacobson. And I really can't help but think that, or just try to imagine where he would be if he was still alive.
Oh, man. Neil was a warrior, man. I mean, can I tell a little Neil story?
Please.
Well, I've been talking to Neil for a long time that we need to essentially bring this contextual form of thinking. He did his ABCT presidential address on it into the mainstream, and we really needed to do that. What that sensibility led to ACBS later on. He called me up and he said, "Okay, I finally see it. We're gonna." For the longest time, he's saying, "No, we can do it another." Finally said, "We need to do it. We need to do it. We need to declare the revolution. We need to form a society. We need to get together. We're going to do it. We're going to great." So I bought an airline ticket on Alaska Airlines. I was going to fly from Reno to Seattle. We were going to sit down and plan the revolution. And then I got a call that he died.
Oh, wow.
And had he lived, he was such a warrior. I don't know, because he just wanted to go after traditional CBT tooth and nail. You see it in these dismantling studies he'd done. And he literally said, and I think he was serious in a way, that he wanted to do a study on behavioral activation done by homeless people versus cognitive therapy done by Academy of Cognitive Therapy people, and beat them. That was the kind of guy he was. There would have been blood all over the floor. And I would have been right standing next to him. I mean, I would have just because of the fun of it, Three Musketeers, fighting dragons and stuff. But when he died, my way is not like that. I mean, I'm more of an old political organizer who believes in the group. And so I tried to lead from behind. So everything slows down. And there was some obnoxious stuff in there, but not too much of it. And it was the kinder, gentler. People were kind of still mad at me, but man, you should have seen it, how it would have been if Neil had been alive. Tooth and claw, the Game of Thrones.
It's interesting because
I love the guy. I just love him.
I see pictures of him, and he looks like so gentle, and I mean, I'm sure he was gentle, but it's funny to hear this other.
He had multiple sides. Kirk Strassel was a good friend of him. They would go and watch.
Yeah, I interviewed him recently, and he told me a few tales too. And
when I met him on internship, the first thing he asked me, the very first thing, he's a brand new intern, just showed up. He was in the class behind me, and he comes in. He says, "Hi, Steve. How many publications have you had?" That's literally true. Well, "Hi, Steve" was the first thing.
Yeah.
And then so he was competitive and crazy. Wonderful.
You're not like Mr. Act Superman 24/7. But I do experience you as someone who takes good care of yourself. I mean, I see you as fit, and I see you you seem to me like you're on the beam. But I guess I'm curious, like what are some things you're active in now as far as taking care of yourself?
Well, I think what the psychological flexibility processes are about is not repairing broken people. It's not about treating syndromes. It's not about fixing mental illness. I mean, we'll play that game because if you're in China, you speak Chinese, but that's the way it used to be. You got grants, etc. But really what it's about is digging down to processes that lift up people and move them forward. And that includes physical health. It includes social wellness. So if you're not using your psychological tools to empower the kind of life that you want to live. Either there's something more needed in the tools, or there's more work you need to do. Now there's always more work you need to do. I mean, I am not the king of the ACT processes, and I was joking to you just minutes ago, just ask my wife. But, things like, for all of my busyness and stuff, I'm not a big exerciser and stuff, but I do my push-ups, and I do try to ride my bike, and I do, not compulsively, but just enough,
Okay.
Before I was doing bad push-ups, I could do my age, which was always my goal per day. But now Stevie has me, because he, just got his black belt. He knows exercise. He says, "No, those aren't real push-ups.
Yeah.
You can't hang your head and just look down like that, Dad. You have to, practically touch your nose with the carpet." Well, I went down to like 10. I'm up now I'm creeping up towards 40. I'll eventually get to 7.
Wow. That's a lot.
Actually, it's an interesting one. Do you know that push-ups, number of push-ups alone, correlates with health and wellness and effective aging better than any other single exercise?
Good push-ups.
Interesting facts. Yeah, well, good push-ups are more challenging. I'm not sure really good matters, but it has to do also with social kind of health as well, and so mental resilience. Some of that stuff we know. We got research showing that, for example, psychological inflexibility, experiential avoidance, you're snipping off your telomeres, which predicts cell aging, which predicts premature aging and even death. We know that psychological flexibility downregulated stress-related gene systems. And some of those are genetic or epigenetic. Some of those don't have to do at all. I mean, I'm the son of a mother who escaped from Germany, and half of her aunts and uncles died in ovens. Well, you just look at the research on that. It means, I was born, never mind, it came from, my dad had alcoholic, had anxiety problems. My mother, OCD, depressed, and came out of that kind of a background, plus her father becoming a Nazi sympathizer and say, "Don't tell people you have tainted blood." I mean, this poor dear was, having trauma after trauma after trauma. I just learned within the last few years that her mother committed suicide. Wow. And she held herself responsible. I didn't know that till I was in my late 60s. My whole life makes much more sense now. But my point being, you want to do the psychological things as best you can that help you deal with the card deck you've been dealt. And a lot of those things are changeable by environment and behavior. We drank the Kool-Aid that they're not. And we went through that era that, genes maybe do it. And now we're into, my brain maybe do it. And brain's a dependent variable, not just an independent variable. Genes are dependent variables, not just independent variables. Who knew? You can up and down regulate them. We're doing it right now. Do you know that 8 weeks of meditation, 7% of your genome is up or down regulated? 8 weeks of meditation. Wow. Every cell in your body is 7% different.
Is that good meditation or bad meditation?
Yeah, good question. Well, it was the good studies there are Herb Benson's stuff, which is focused, de-woo-woo-ized Maharishi, basically, transcendental meditation, that focused tradition. Of course, it's not TM, didn't invent it. It's ancient. But my point being, let's get on the same page, the life scientists, the behavioral scientists, the folks interested in culture and stigma, prejudice, all the rest, and focus on processes that lift people up. And boy, you could do a whole lot better than taking the psychological flexibility processes as a beginning working set. You're going to want to add things, attachment maybe, of course, things, social support, social cooperation, compassion for others, and diet and exercise, sleep, and so on. But so I don't know. I don't want to hold myself up as a shining light of anything, but I will say this: I take psychological flexibility and ACT very seriously enough that most minutes of my waking day are somehow related to it.
Mm.
Not because I'm a freak or trying to, say, I was right. I mean, I'm just channeling stuff that has been in the culture. Some of the stuff is outright theft. I mean, I'm taking things that are out there that we knew about. The only difference is trying to figure out what the processes are, all the way down to, how language and cognition works, and then put it into a science journey and not just a cultural wing of health or spirituality or whatever. But I think if you do that, you have a better chance of having an immune system do what it's supposed to, or having your body cooperate. But you're going out horizontal. I mean, it's not like you're going to sail off the planet into another zone of existence. I mean, you're just playing the odds. I think if you do it in order to play the odds in some sort of heavy, mindy way, you're undoing the good of doing it, because they're the same thing, like, oh, yeah. So I try not to think about it, worry about it. I just try to do my psychological flexibility work and the things that anyone would tell you to do who cares about health in terms of diet, exercise. My diet is very good and linked. It's basically a Mediterranean diet, pescatarian, etc., and has been for 25 years. And I mean, it's not so. Yeah. You asked about it. Serves you right.
We'll segue into recipes with Steve here in a minute.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My wife and I love watching cooking shows. Maybe cooking shows.
The ACT channel. It's funny you say that about the stress associated with trying to kind of beat the odds. Yuval Noah Harari, I don't know if you're familiar with his book, 21 Problems for the 21st Century. And he talks about AI and how we're moving towards being immortal. Like that's what some folks are after, and the stress and anxiety that's going to bring with it, once you have to be, but maybe that's.
Well, it's interesting. One worry I'd have about that, you look at the data on stress. Stress is not toxic. It's trying not to be stressed that's toxic. So we get stressed about stress, and that's toxic. But what's the difference between a challenge and stress? It's your posture with regard to it. Now, I don't want to be too, if you're the victim of, prejudice, stigma, et cetera, I don't want to be sanguine about that. But, we're not I-beams. We're not about to crack. I mean, the engineering carryover that was done around that whole, and the point of that being, I'm skeptical of this kind of anxious, mindy, I want to live together stuff. I think it's toxic for us. Have you ever been around a health freak, somebody who's just obsessed by it? Does that look good for you? Do you like being around them? And does it really look good for them? It doesn't look good for them to me. I don't care how many miles you're running, or whether or not you're, drinking nothing but chamomile tea. I mean, it looks to me like you're stressing yourself out inside the I shall not have. Well, there, I just said it. You're stressing yourself out. See, the way we talk about it is we don't even have good ways of talking about what it's like to roll with your challenges, to step up with your opportunities, to do it full out. And there's so much more flexibility around all kinds of things. Sleep, for example. Yeah, sleep's really important, but stressing about sleep is, I freaked out about it. I didn't get enough sleep. Okay, that's you. You're just snipped off of your telomeres.
On this topic, I'm wondering if you're, spotted on the street and someone recognizes you who's a layperson, and they say, I know who you are. I kind of know what you do. Why should I face my darkness?
Why should I face my
darkness?
Why should you? Well, it's funny that Hello Darkness was one of the things when the first wave hit of ACT, a very popular magazine thing happened. Somebody decided to title that, just like Time magazine, happiness is not normal. These are not things I've ever said. But that was the way the message landed. And it's actually a mindy kind of example of what the cultural stream we're swimming in which if you're not doing happy, happy, joy, joy, smiley face buttons from morning to night, then what, you don't care about happiness? No, I do care about happiness. And guess what? It doesn't come like that. It's not happy. When you're clinging, do you know that experiential avoidance, the initial wave of kind of acty stuff having to do with emotion, is just maybe a little bit more toxic than experiential attachment? You're a joy junkie, you got problems. You go down to 4th Street and you can score some stuff that'll turn you into a joy junkie in another way. And we call it a fix for a reason. You're trying to fix things in place, not just repair stuff. It's a metaphor. It means I want to hold it. I want to hold it. I want to hold on to it. Yeah. How can we convey the message? What is the message? I think the message is to let's start here and now in consciousness. And let's create a context in which we get to learn from our own history. Why? Because it'll serve us in being able to make some choices. What kind? That will move us towards the life we really want to live, how we want to be in the world. How we can love and contribute and create and play in the world, right? That shift from my history in this moment to the kind of life the message is not hello darkness. The message is, if you want to dumb yourself down, run from your history. Your history contains painful things. You're going to learn from it, or you're going to run from it. If you run from it, you can't learn from it. So, you take something like alexithymia and experiential avoidance and so forth. Let's take people who've been abused. I mean, one of the least fair things on the planet. Children who've been abused sexually or in other ways, okay? You want to predict whether or not that person's going to be perpetrated on in the future? Here's how to do it. Do you downregulate your emotions? You avoid them, and you're alexithymic to the point you can't even name them. Because what's happened there, it would be just like if you had fingers that became numb or something from a process, and then you easily could injure your fingers. I mean, you don't want to go home with a guy who's not safe. How are you going to know he's not safe? You can't do it just by, here's the rule, bikers with tattoos are not saying, no, that person in the suit, who's driving that Tesla may be the one who's not safe. How are you going to read it? You need your history on deck to do that. Otherwise, you don't get wiser over time. You just get older. So our message in the ACT work is hard to explain. I think psychological flexibility helps, but I wish I had a slightly better term because it doesn't convey the strength that comes from onboarding your history. It looks like just bending. But it's something more like flexible strength, that, you want a tree that bends, but you want a tree that's strong in the same way, so I don't know, it's hard to language about, but it's not that hard to know from the science of it what we need to do, I think. And those flexibility processes, socially extended and also taking care of our biophysiological needs, are a really powerful working set for how to carry your history, come into the present, focus on what's important, and get your feet moving. And that ding, ding, ding predicts positive outcomes everywhere you can look. And so the person who came to me, I'd say, I would only ask you to open up to pain if it's useful. And I just want to have this little conversation with you. Is there any painful emotion you can name that you don't pay good money to produce? Oh, I hate sadness. Well, then why do you buy tearjerker novels? How about when your mother dies? What if your child was killed? You don't have to go very far before people say, actually, I kind of want sadness. And I want anxiety. I even pay money to produce it. I ride roller coasters, whatever. I mean, you can't name an emotion that isn't useful to you sometimes, and you know it, and that you don't pay to produce it. So why are you running from it? I get that we're being overwhelmed by emotion. And I'm in role here. I would say that, but I get that darkness can overwhelm you. I get that. And I'll tell you what, if that happens when we don't learn how to take what's useful, and then with respect, Mr. Mind, leave the rest.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not talking about wallowing. I'm not talking about being stuck. I'm talking about being able to take on your history, show up here, and use it to do good things that lift you up in your life. And that's what this is about. Sometimes darkness is part of that process. If that person asked me today, I'd say, "Are you a little worried about the COVID thing?"
Mm.
They're going to say yes. I say, "You should be."
Yeah.
You should be. And it's helpful to you. It helps you have compassion for people who are in areas of the world. My wife's Brazilian. Boy, you look at what's happening there. It helps you know that probably a good idea to put on that mask, not just for yourself, but for others.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps you be pro-social, it helps you care. So darkness is part of life, just like night and day. It's part of life. And you know that. So let's get the skills so that you can do what your heart really tells you is wise. If a person says, "Oh, I don't know that," well, I can within minutes usually show people that they do know that. My favorite one, I've been on many podcasts where I've said it, is to show me with your body you at your worst with an issue. Now, psychological one, now show me with your body you at your best. And universally, you're worst. Your eyes close, your head goes down, your arm and hands come in, you fold at the stomach, you might even flop on the floor. Those are all metaphors for being closed, not in touch. And universally, you at your best, your head comes up, your eyes open, your arms and hands go out. So let's do that. You already know it. I asked you, you showed me in a matter of seconds. We've taken these pictures around the freaking world, whether you're wearing burqas or loincloths, you do the same thing around the world. People show open, engaged postures at their best, as a metaphor, without any explanation for what we mean by at their best, and closed, defensive postures if they're not. So I get that you know how to be closed and defensive, but you know that it's not good for you. So let's work on the tools that will allow you to be how you know you want to be with your own life and history and circumstances. And that'll empower you to do lots of cool things, changing the world. I mean, I'm not talking about tolerance. Acceptance is not tolerance. It's receiving the gift of your own history.
Okay. I appreciate that.
No, that's my rant. But little different some things I've said before, but I think it's I wish I could get it into like a 3-word. If anybody listening to this can come up with 3 words,
yeah,
a trademark,
a bumper sticker.
Send it to me.
Someone in the South, probably. We need a Southerner.
Well, we need, actually what we need, poets and artists. And it's interesting, ACT and RFT are going into the arts. If you don't know that, you should. Yeah, it's so good. Well, you people who are listening won't be able to see it, but I just have one right here. This is a little sticker. I don't have any commercial interest in this. It's a film company called The Frame Company. Why? Because
the Frame Theory.
For the Frame Theory, rather. The Frame Theory. That's the name of their company. Because they will do filming for you, helping with your business or whatever, your products, etc., using ACT and relational frame theory to figure out how to present it in a way that lands well on people. So it's not surprising if you slow down and you look at what art and literature have always been doing. They've been digging down to wisdom. And if you claim that these flexibility processes are something about how to be wiser with yourself, it should deeply resonate, not just with your showing with your body, but with Star Wars and
video games. Video games.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You look at the structure of our stories, you have a challenge, it's emotionally upsetting, you find a sense of self that steps up to it, you focus on the present, your allies come in, you figure out what your values are. And you take arms against a sea of troubles and throw the ring into the crack of doom, or get the golden fleece, or whatever the thing is, and come back to the community and say, here.
Mm-hmm.
And then life returns to normal until the next time that R2D2 shows up. You know, it's in every freaking story that people like, because they recognize it
somewhere.
They know that's their journey. It resonates with them. So let's ask the artists how to talk to the culture about it.
So I realize we're running here long, and I'm just want to check in with you if we have a few minutes to just do a little bit of a real play. I don't know what I'm just going to talk about a situation that I've noticed in my interpersonal experiences, and we'll see what happens. Maybe it just turns into you asking me and we talking about functionally, or we do something else. I'm open to whatever. Okay. So I've noticed that I have a tendency to be really kind of I lean in the people pleasing direction. Okay. And part of that is, like, I've noticed is like kind of like there's some control in that, you know, like I'm going to win someone over. And if someone's mad at me, it just can't happen, because, you know, everyone has to be okay with me, you know? And something I've been working on recently, I've been noticing is how I've just been noticing how narrow that is. You know, what happens when I see the frustration on someone's face is like all my attention goes there, and I've got to figure out how that can go away. Okay. And what I've been doing recently is kind of trying to broaden my repertoire and notice other things that are happening, noticing, you know, just, I mean, physically inside of me, and also what else can I be doing other than that as a practical experience. And it's really interesting, you know. I like episodes of frustration are a lot more short-lived in my experience. And that's not what my, you know, kind of intuitive MO would be. It makes sense of that.
Yeah. So if you were to put that in rule form, what have you learned? What have you noticed?
Well, that when I'm after one thing, when I've got my scope set on getting rid of one thing, that one thing, I get stuck to that one thing, and the one thing kind of just grows. Yeah. And it's like I'm watering this, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And I don't know if you're getting after the rule of, you know, helpful rule, or what your question is.
I just thought could we do a little exercise?
Yeah.
Would it be okay if we do it as an eyes closed exercise?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll try to not let it go on too long, but I just want to do something and see how it lands. To do it, though, I need a person in your life where you've wanted to please, but you're not sure that you're able to, or that they are pleased with you. And you don't need to make it an extraordinary specific, but I do need that person and that face of that person. Okay. And maybe just a little bit of a sense of some of the kinds of situations that have happened to that person where you felt that yearning to please, and that worry that you didn't, and that focus on. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. You have somebody in mind? You don't need to say who it is. Don't have to do that at all.
Don't.
Well, you can decide later on. You can decide on the other side of this.
I see. Okay.
So why don't you go ahead and just allow your eyes to close so you can focus on what I'm saying. And let's just start out with your body as it is right now. Do a little brief scan. I'm actually closing my eyes too, just so I can get a sense of what I'm asking you to do. And from your feet, just as if you were kind of easing into a hot tub, up your legs, through your middle torso. As you come up, notice what's going on in your body. If anything, any particular sensations, muscles, etc., up through your torso and chest and arms and hands and head and neck. as we kind of sink into, and maybe pop out of, I don't want you to not be able to breathe, but this kind of psychological hot tub of, here's how I'm feeling right now in the world of physical sensation. Noticing anything that stands out from the other things. And then notice something that you don't usually notice that stands out, but that had to stand out in order to do that, which is that you're noticing. Your feet are not noticing themselves. Your arms and hands are not noticing themselves. There's a conscious, aware human being here that's noticing your bodily sensations. And don't grab that part and look at it. Just touch for a second, just an ineffable moment that you're here aware right now, noticing something. And it's from that perspective or point of view that I'd like you to just do this brief exercise. And I asked you to pick somebody who yearned to please, but are concerned that maybe you don't or can't or haven't. And I want you to picture that person there in front of you, just in your imagination. Actually kind of create the experience of seeing that person as if you're actually close enough to be in a conversation where you might make that move. And what I want you to touch is this yearning for pleasing that shows up in moments like this. We're not imagining the details of conversation, but if the next thing were to come out of your mouth already, see if it's not true that there'd be a quality, even in hi or how are you, that would have a little bit of people-pleasing qualities to it. See if you can catch that. You might do that. Not always, but you might. Especially with somebody here, whether you know you care, you want that, and it's been hard, or you fear it might be hard. And so I want you to touch that part. And then I want you to go a level down and see if you can touch this. That you yearn to somehow belong in this interaction, to be welcomed in this interaction, to be in this group of two, and to not be, not just judged or found not to be pleasing. Dig a little deeper and see if it's also what the not be might include, to not be alone, unwanted, isolated, to not belong. And see if you can open up to that there's a painful place in there. See if you can find it. Of what would happen if you weren't pleasing. And this time, in this moment, see if you can open to that. Like actually open up to the desert of aloneness, alienation, disconnection. Almost as if that face that you're looking at begins to gray, like a screen on your computer where you turn it and the colors start to die, like you're getting more and more disconnected from belonging and connection. But this time, do it on purpose. I want you to actually dial that thing down and to feel more fully times when you've really felt abandoned and alone, uncared for. And just open up. If there's any memories that flit up, or any bodily sensations that flit up, allow them to. Aloneness and disconnection, isolation, being misunderstood, not being able to communicate. Go inside the pain of that and see if it doesn't there's a seed in there that you normally wouldn't want to look at. And it might have a history. I don't know. It might show up in different places, not just in this conversation. And as you look at that, as you open up to that, here's what I want you to do. I want you to catch who's noticing. Catch that you're noticing this. That same part of you that noticed the hot tub awareness of what your body was doing is now here noticing these echoes of your past that show up in these interactions of pain, of disconnection, alienation, failure to communicate, failure to be wanted, failure to belong. See if you can find that. And then from that perspective or point of view, without grasping, without holding, but just as a touch, I want you to see if that part of you is actually able to be fully you, even with the painful emotion that comes with not belonging. You're not broken. You don't have to be fixed. Even this emotion can be felt. Even those memories can be remembered. Even those thoughts can be seen. Even those sensations have a place in consciousness. I'm just asking you to catch that the part of you that's witnessing and noticing is perfectly willing to witness and notice your own experience, even when it contains these kinds of things. And then in your mind's eye, having caught that, I want you to mentally bring that face back of that person. And in your mind's eye, imagine that you're looking that person in their eyes, that person that you want to please, so that you belong, so that you connect with, so that you're understood. And instead of pleasing, not to eliminate it, I don't mean instead of an elimination, but I mean, if we're not just focused at pleasing, come back to those mental picture, those eyes in front of you, and see if there's another possibility here. What you're seeing in those eyes is the consciousness in the other that you just engaged in to notice your own experience. You're seeing a conscious human being. You're connected in consciousness with that human being, even if you're not pleasing them. Don't hear me to say that this is reassurance or diminishment to eliminate pain. I'm not asking you to do that. I'm asking you to open up to the possibility that you're inherently connected. You inherently belong. If you allow the superficial features to be less important and the essence to be more important. You might see in those eyes that that person is afraid too. That person wants to please you. That person is afraid of being alone. That person is afraid of being misunderstood. And instead of rushing to please, could we please be present with another person connecting with you? And what would happen if the next thing out of your mouth, that "hi, how are you," wasn't about pleasing, but was about connecting? It was an extension of who you are anyway. We've been gone about 7 minutes. You can picture this room and the things that are in it. Just for fun, you might see if you can remember something about what your eyes will give you when you open up your eyes. And then when you're ready, just come back and let's see what showed up.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I felt a wholeness in catching. It wasn't kind of singular event that was in here that I was, it was a kind of, there was a, I don't know, there was like a kind of a circle,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be worth, could you relate it all to the idea that underneath people pleasing is this fear of abandonment, disconnection, aloneness, alienation?
Definitely.
And this is something you know about. I mean, this isn't something you just imagined.
No.
You've had moments like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was taken back to many of them. And then the confusion about, well, if I don't do that,
Yeah. What if? Yeah. If you don't do that, what's the alternative? And what, I just don't care about that? And that's going to happen all the time. And your mind will give you lots of formulations.
Yeah.
But then there's this other dimension of, in addition to all the formulations and stuff, there's this reality of connection that's there in the, as real as, one hand hitting the other. It's, if you open up to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so,
yeah. Well, I'm just thinking about the where I'm at right now and how I'm feeling, and seeing and experiencing, past that in myself, how helpful that is for me to see past.
Yeah, you can maybe find a little kinder place to put the worries and the urges to please, but maybe a little more values place to put actual deployment of life's moments in a way that is whole and affords connection. Because part of the horrible thing about people pleasing is if you trick them into being pleased, they're now somebody you manipulated.
Yeah, it is. It's yes. Amen to that.
And there you are, disconnected again. There you are, alone again. So if it landed reasonably well with you, can I just unpack it in terms of principles?
Yeah.
Because I haven't done something exactly like this ever.
Oh.
I've never done that exercise.
Okay. Yeah.
The reason I did that exercise, though, goes back to that early geeky part of our talking, which is there are principles underneath these things. And when you tell me about people pleasing and I connect it to these flexibility processes, or is there something in there that's being avoided? Is there a thought in there that's being fused with? But there's also this kind of, it's coming in a social context, this yearning to belong and connect. In the ACT approach, that I hear nowness of awareness is the core of belonging. And it goes back to the RFT idea, that we as these social primates created this sense of self so that you could take the perspective of others. It isn't just I, it's you. It isn't just here, it's there. It isn't just now, it's then.
Yeah.
These dictic frames, right? So that's all geeky kind of theory, but then it lands in, therefore, one of the places I might really want to go with something like people pleasing is to sense of consciousness, sense of awareness, the I hear nowness of the fromness of awareness that's established with dictic framing, and then being able to use that to help with more emotional openness. And you saw me do that, more cognitive openness. We started to do that, more present focus. I did a little bit of that in just the very beginning, and not much on the value stuff, but I kind of did, because you want to connect, you want to belong, you want to be part of it. And part of that's a values-based journey. But my point just being here that the uncommon sense of taking a formal thing like people pleasing and being able to move it in an unexpected direction because it's a functional approach to why is that how did that come to be of importance, and what is going on there. gives you some alternatives as a practitioner. And I don't want to be singing my praises. I don't know if that landed really well or
It did,
not.
and I couldn't help but, I mean, I'm here, and but I felt like there was a definite place where the face came back, and part of that was some transformation of stimulus function.
Yeah.
Going on. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, and I bet you, and let's just see if this, well, you come back and check, when that person you picked actually shows up in front of you, some of those functions will be present.
Yeah.
They'll have some different functions on you. And maybe in this appetitive function of, I would like to connect in consciousness with this person. And pleasing was my way to that, but maybe there's another way that's more in tune with, kinder to myself, less manipulative, kinder to the other person, more values-based, etc. So the transformation of stimulus functions kind of pieces, how does these interactions land? We have these relational operants that are trying to produce contact with consequences that are of importance, like belonging, feeling, etc. And I think that happens inside our struggles, and it happens inside our therapy. And when we do therapy well, I think we're trying to get it aligned in such a way that the functions of the environment that we're in are one that support us and being the kind of person we want to be.
Yeah.
You said there was a sense of wholeness. And, I think there's the wholeness of you as a whole person. There's the wholeness of you in combination of the we of a communication with another person. And, it's not by accident that heal and whole comes from the same root. So I think we're trying to do something that's healing.
Yeah.
And find a place where it's okay to be you fully without this defense, and to connect with others and do what you came here to do in the time you got on the planet. So, and it's probably not people pleasing. Nothing wrong with it. But it's, if it's covering over the pain of loss and disconnection, it means you can't learn from that. If it's pushing you to manipulate, it means you don't get it even when you do. Person's pleased, but you fool them, and who wants to be around fools? I mean, you just, the mind's trying to do what only the whole person can do. So wholeness is a good.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. I'm really grateful for your spirit in that, and I'm excited to relive it again without having to think about making a recording, and what am I going to say after? So, I'm just so grateful for your giving spirit and nature, and sharing your really valuable time with me today. Thank you for that, Steve.
Oh, thank you. This is really cool.
And is there anything that you've got going on that you'd like to let people know to check out? I mean, you have the praxis courses, which are recorded, and I've heard.
Yeah, active practice is now available continuously. So, but it really should be active immersion, then active practice. That's the way I like it.
Okay.
If people have done boot camps and stuff, they can go directly to active practice. Is there anything else coming up? No, I think, but not for me in any kind of. If you could kindly just put up StephenZHayes.com if they want to stay in touch with me. And my rants and raps and all that blogs, just go there and click on yes, please send it to me.
Okay.
And if they don't like it, they can do a one-click opt-out.
All right.
I don't spam them, but I do share.
Yeah. And okay. Well, and then I just want to also thank you for all the work on this report that just came out too. I was going to ask you about that, but just really.
Well, that wouldn't be bad to put up a little link, because I love that report.
Yeah.
I love it. And I think it's going to have some legs. I think it's going to matter, not just to ACDS, but to the world, because it's very forward-looking. Yeah. And on some of these issues, like technical terms and middle-level terms and all that, it's pretty tight. Yeah. It gives people a place to go. Thank you so much, Steve. I really appreciate it all. Thank you. Take care. But I'm getting stronger. They take a piece of me, but I'm
getting stronger. They take a piece of me, but I'm getting stronger. They take a piece of me.